Battery metals focused Pallinghurst Group has over a decade's experience investing in the sector. The group has seen the lows and now the dizzying highs. Is Sean Thijsse. He is Group Head of Corporate Finance at Pallinghurst. He is also a speaker at Explore 2021, the Quebec Mining Convention. Sean, welcome to Kitco.
Thank you very much, Michael. Thank you for having me. Pleasure to be here.
We've heard all sorts of numbers about how energy transition is gaining space. What is the figure that is most arresting to you?
Well, look, I don't think there's any single figure which is striking. They're all pretty impressive, to be honest. I mean, we hear numbers such as 30% compound annual growth rate for electric vehicles and 40% for energy storage systems. But I think the numbers that have the most impact, that truly give the scale of what's needed in the future, is the simple times multiple. I mean, we're seeing multiples of 20 for materials such as graphite, nickel, and cobalt, and over 40 for lithium. And I mean, when you compare that to today's production, I mean, it's pretty staggering and shows the unprecedented demand for these key battery materials.
How does Pallinghurst assess metals needed for energy transition? You've had a lot of lithium and graphite exposure, and now you have some nickel with your Talon deal.
Yeah, so look, I mean, we not only look at the materials that are needed within the lithium-ion batteries, but we also look at the related technologies associated around those batteries. So, for example, when you look at a typical NMC battery, which is a nickel, manganese, cobalt battery, we would look at the composition of that battery, which is essentially lithium, nickel, manganese, and cobalt on the cathode side, and graphite for the anode. But I mean, that's just simply the battery, right? There's all the conductors, the wiring, etc., that connect everything, and those need to be made. They're primarily made from materials such as copper, which is a cornerstone for all electricity-related applications. And the great thing about our Talon deal is that it contains copper and cobalt byproducts in addition to the the really high grade nickel that it produces, or that it will produce. Also rare earths, they're used within EVs. So we assess not only what is located within the lithium-ion battery, but its associated technologies as well.
We're Kitco. We have a long relationship with people that have been punting on various juniors, talking to analysts. I was interested in your perspective, Sean, just how might an assessment or an investment assessment might be similar to, say, your run-of-the-mill gold junior investment, and then how might it be different in the EV space?
Yeah, so let's start off with the similarities. I mean, there's always boxes that need to be ticked, regardless of what what industry you're looking at. And starting off with the similarities, we would look at the geology. What's the grade like? Is it a continuous and homogeneous deposit, or is it dispersed? That requires that may necessitate satellite mining. Other similarities are, what are the financial returns, any permitting issues, infrastructure, etc. Just your typical, check the box exercise. But I guess, from a battery materials perspective, it's gold and if you look at gold, manganese, iron ore, those sort of they're essentially commodities, and battery materials are highly complex, and the chemical processes that are extremely complex to sort of to comprehend, essentially. And we really dig really deep into the processes, and we take on lots of advisors, and lots of external consultants that we use to help us with the due diligence process. Another sort of what some people may not typically look at as much is the environmental impact of the project, and we spend a lot of time on this, and the relationship with the local communities and governments. So I mean, in terms of boxes that need to be checked, from our perspective, a quality resource base is essential. Location, government and community support, and of course, environmentally friendly extraction.
There is a real push around metals that are deemed to be strategic, countries that want to make sure that they have a reliable supply of them. But I wonder, I think nearly a decade ago, we had a run up in rare earths due to the same concern. Then you saw that the sector crashed and everyone went back to relying on Asian supply. Is there a concern about metals being deemed strategic, and are we actually going to be able to keep the momentum on this?
Yeah, so look, I think there's a difference this time around. Where there's actually something happening right now. international governments are, transitioning from fossil fuels. They're committing multi-billions of dollars to expand, lithium-ion battery production, in order to secure a low-carbon future, which is, essential to, to our survival, essentially. Countries and automakers have announced the end of production of, internal combustion engines. Battery megafactories are currently in the process of being built. So, actually, the difference that I see now is that, things are happening. These plants are actually being physically built. And, in the past, I think it was a little bit more talk and little action.
The one difference that I find with the space right now is there just seems to be so much specialized chemistry. I think of Ioneer, which has its lab running for years in Vancouver to model out its Rhyolite project down in Nevada. There's also Next Source Materials, which has a specialized plant for its superflake graphite. Why is there so much specialized mineral processing? Is it need to develop IP? You mentioned previously, does it have to do with ESG, or does it just have to do with these stringent purity requirements?
Yeah, look, so I think it's a combination of all those factors that you mentioned. With new technologies being developed, there's a requirement for these to be tested and qualified by the customers in order to ensure that it will suit their needs. You got to remember that these products are a result of extremely complex chemistries, and are not a simple drill and blast, load and haul operation, of your typical iron ore mine. So the testing that is required to prove that your product works, and it's also typically a requirement for customers before they will even do business with you. So yeah, it's a combination of all of those things.
Mentioning earlier about investing in the space and, just talking about the comparisons between, say, your run-of-the-mill gold junior as opposed to investing in somebody that has exposure to battery materials. This seems like this is kind of an added complexity. It makes it a little harder for a retail investor to actually do a punt on somebody that they consider has exposure.
Yes, I think it is. There's currently no major miner out there that has access to a suite of battery materials. If an investor wants to gain an exposure to this industry, it would need to invest. They would need to invest directly in individual listed companies. And whilst diversification is theoretically possible, the amount of due diligence and understanding of the market is quite high, which would limit your average retail investor.
Australia seems to have really embraced the sector. I think of ASX listed Lynas, Albemarle, Galaxy Resources, Pilbara Minerals, never mind Wyloo and BHP Billiton seem to be fighting over Noront right now. You have Pallinghurst has its offices in both Australia and Canada. What do you see differences?
Yes, we do. So, I think Australia, they've got these massive, large spodumene mines that are in operation. They've currently got the largest in the world, actually. But the one thing I would say about Australia is that they typically don't do much processing within its borders. And the reason for that is it's high labor costs, high electricity costs there. So what you typically see is that their production is exported to China for further refinement. This is not it's not the most environmentally friendly option to do that. Whereas in Canada, there's in terms of a fully integrated battery materials industry, I'd go ahead and say that Canada is probably ahead of the curve, and ticks a lot of boxes in that respect.
There's a lot of money in the space right now seeking projects. I think a Detour Gold executives forming a $250 million SPAC. There's a Cisco that had something at the same funding level, also looking for opportunities. There's also the tycoons like Mick Davis's and the Robert Friedlands. How does Pallinghurst be competitive?
Yeah, look, so I think what differentiates us from others, including SPACs, is that we are a hands-on active investor. And alongside the portfolio companies that we invest in, we drive the underlying strategy, and we provide the critical support when required. We have our people on the ground, we deploy them within the companies, and we assist and complement the local management teams. We know how to build and operate. We have hands-on experience, that money managers potentially don't have. And one thing that I'd say about Pallinghurst is that every single project that we have committed to building is successfully operating today. So I think we've got a very good track record within this, within the mining and natural resources industry, and along with our hands-on active approach, I think we can, we've proven that we are able to be competitive within this industry.
Is there new money going into the space, or do you just see a lot of the old hands and like the companies that I mentioned previously? I think, for instance, of like Andreessen Horowitz and their backing of cobalt, for instance.
Yeah, look, so I think there's a combination of both there. I mean, within our certainly within our own investor base, we've seen that. The old hands in mining and the new entrants, I think they're realizing that the EV and stationary energy storage revolution is here to stay. And that exceptional investment opportunities, that this creates. So, and they've realized that this necessitates the need for capital redeployment, and we are seeing that.
Lastly, Sean, biggest undercovered story in the battery metal space?
I'd like to say us. No, look.
That's not fair, Sean. We have reported on Pallinghurst quite a bit.
No, look, I think just in general, the whole battery metal space, it's really critical, and I think it needs to be showcased more. And I think you guys are doing an excellent job in doing so. But I think it needs more coverage, and it's critical to our future, and it's on our doorstep and not going anywhere.
Sean, we appreciate you committing to more interviews with Kitco.
All right, no problem. Anytime.
He's Sean Thijsse. He is Group Head of Corporate Finance at Pallinghurst Group. My name is Michael McRae, and you are watching Kitco Mining.